regulation of campaign financing. It's a view I still hold very strongly. The reason is laws should actually address problems. What was the problem our law was trying to address? At that point, and sitting in that room, we were trying to address issues of illicit financing. And I said that putting Iebc at crosshairs with the political class will create an attack on the institution of the Iebc. I don't think I'm wrong today, if you have seen the processes that have gone around that. Now, I think laws pass through processes. The Campaign Financing Act is a law. The court ruled on the regulations and said that the regulations, once published by the Iebc, does not need to go through Parliament.
Let me interrupt you a little bit and try to switch it this way.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a way that, with or without the legislation, that we can deal with this business about money, campaign financing?
Thank you.
Those alternative ways of addressing it without using legislation.
Thank you so much. And thank you for actually changing it from that perspective, because I was going to go through a very mundane lane, you know. Yeah. So, and that then shifts me to 2013 and my stand then, which even as I mature, I think the stand still remains. I think there is the place of disclosure. And I think we should facilitate more of disclosure on candidates and aspirants, and then use that data, because what we want to deal with is illicit financial flows in electoral space. When we allow candidates to disclose sources of their funding and funding that they're going to use, and then use institutions that are in charge of illicit financial flow, bribery and all that, to actually then address or come and arraign some of those people who are participating in illicit financial flows, then we actually get to address it. So that for me will be the key area that I think. But I think political parties will require to be apprised and be involved in the process of internal regulation of their membership, because that's where the problem comes, right? You go and then you see people actually coming to be candidates, and nothing is actually done to screen or probably look at some of these sources of money in the campaigns and all that. So it should actually be taken back to the extent of the involvement of political parties. But finally, Ambassador, and I think a place that is very instrumental is the place of the Kenyan public. Can the Kenyan public punish those who violate, or those who are using money that you can't even actually determine the sources? And the only way that Kenyans can actually, the constitutional way, is vertical accountability, and that is the way of the vote.
Thank you, and all the best. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I want to turn you over to FCPA Tanui to ask you some questions. FCPA, please.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Dennis, for your presentation so far. It is said that commissioners are the linchpin of the commission, and no duty is beyond commissioners' oversight, since they are the nap of the commission. In light of the role of commissioners in the governance of Iebc, what is your comment on that statement?
Member, if you don't mind, I would love to.
Commissioners
yes.
are the linchpin of the commission,
yeah.
And no duty is beyond commissioners' oversight, since they are the nap of the commission.
Clear now?
Yes. In light of the role of commissioners in the governance of IPC, what is your take on that?
My take is that I'm in agreement. The constitutional mandate, and of course what has been provided in the Iebc Act, looks at the commissioners to play several roles: policy role, strategy, and oversight. At the very essence, all these communicate to each other. So I believe, as a commissioner, we should design policies that enable the oversight. We should design strategies that help the Secretariat realize and advance the true meaning of oversight and accountability in our engagement. And at the very, very least, in my opinion, oversight role is very important, and that is also supported by the Office of the Auditor General. So at the starting point, really, is what the Auditor General is speaking about, the public financial accountability of the place of the IEBC. And if we are going to be talking about free, fair, and credible elections, which then is guaranteed through transparency, accountability, then I think that's really Kenyans, the Commission owes Kenyans an explanation on how resources are used in the process of realizing free, fair, credible elections. If the Commission cannot account for the resources that the Kenyan people have provided to them, how can they account for the votes? And I think in the process of building trust, it is primarily important that the OAG reports are efficiently addressed. In fact, if you look at the recent reports, it says that the 2023-2024 financial audit is qualified. I would imagine that that needs to be unqualified or unmodified in the next financial year, because that's how you build trust. When citizens can see that even the resources they have provided to you, you are using effectively and efficiently, then you build trust in the process, and citizens themselves then come to your side in terms of guaranteeing all those that you talk about.
There is also this view that it's not the commissioners who determine who the winner is, but actually the judiciary is the last electoral commissioner. That judiciary ends up deciding deciding on the elections or who has won during the elections. What is your take in light of the role of judiciary in the independence of IEBC?
I mean, that broadly takes us to all this conversation, public conversation, scholarly conversation about over-judicialization of politics, right, and politicization of the judiciary, which I think is also very, very interesting. But let me say this. I think we have to separate what Article 138 requires and what Article 140 requires. And those two are separate, with two separate institutions. One only kicks in when the other actually lapses. And so I don't think that that is really true in the simplistic sense of how it is being applied. But I think all these are constitutional independent bodies offering their constitutional duties and enforcing the right of Kenyans. It is the right of an aggrieved party to move to the Supreme Court or the courts. That right cannot be taken away. It is also the mandate of the IEBC to conduct and supervise elections. That right and mandate cannot be taken away. So I think for me, all of them are really doing their responsibilities as designed in the Constitution.
Thank you, and I wish you well. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I want to ask Evans Misati to ask you one question. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chairman. You know, I've been dealing with Dennis for quite a while now, and it's interesting when I'm engaging him. I cannot manage one question. Please bear with me, Chair. So, Dennis, welcome.
Thank you.
I like the way you have put it. But now, let me take you back to what you have just mentioned. Before I go to my actual question, you're saying that the Kenyan public to punish, and I tell you that the Kenyan public celebrates. They actually ask for more. That's for your information. Now, let me go back to where you talked about the trust of public trust of IPC and ask you a question. Have you participated in the induction programs through your programs as NDI of IPC commissioners in the past?
Yes.
Now that from where you were participating as a facilitator from NDI, and now you will be a commissioner yourself if given an opportunity, what will you do different? Because there is that perception that the Secretariat will get you drafts as Secretariat, and then we are saying, oh, they are tailoring how you are going to start thinking about your policy. What will you do different in that specific aspect of the drafts?
Thank you. I think there's a difference if you get electoral experts in the commission than when you get people who need to be trained. And I see the place that I offer myself is to support the strategy and that policy development, because that should be the commission's role. Listen, an institution is a going concern. When the commissioners cannot do, somebody has to rise up and do it and then give you. And I think they have probably been responding to a gap. When the commissioners have the capacity to develop policy and build strategies, then the Secretariat will provide administrative and supporting role. And that's where I see myself, Chairman.
Now, what skill, in terms of skill, now you have been making a decision as the CEO of the country director, you have been participating. Now, there is that aspect of now corporate governance. The things you want to do, the things you mentioned, the need to build public confidence, other things. How will you ensure that when now you are going to make corporate decisions, that what you aspire, you are able to take it to your other colleagues so that you hone it together?
So, Chair, in the history of my engagement and the present place, one of the things that NDI prides itself is the whole concept of impartiality in how we engage. As I started, I've told you that we engage all political parties. I engage politicians across the political divide in Kenya, and that concept of impartiality is very key. When other commissioners see that you generally are professional and impartial, it is easy to dialogue and build consensus. And that's really something that I wish and I will carry with myself and take along so that we avoid dividing the commission and building an environment that facilitates dialogue and consensus around issues within the boardroom.
Thanks so much, Dennis. I wish you well, and I like your emotional intelligence.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. I want to invite Ms. Fatuma Misati, please.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Mr. Omondi, if I may call you that.
Yes.
Did I say Fatuma Misati or Fatuma Saman?
Yes?
Fatuma. Thank you. Proceed.
Okay, I didn't get that.
No, I wonder whether I said Fatuma Misati or I said Fatuma Saman.
Please don't give me another spouse. Mr. Omondi, I've learned from your CV, you are the country director NDI, and that NDI is committed to citizen participation, openness, and all that. And my question is very in that. However, you've covered a lot while you were answering other questions, so I'm not going to go that way. But I'll ask you a question very specific to NDI. This seems to be an interesting institution that has been assisting the process of creating political consciousness and supporting democracy and all that. There's a citizenry, a portion of citizenry in this country that are illiterate, that are politically unconscious, and are complacent with their situation. Have you ever, as an institution, targeted such people with content in voter education that can help resolve this? in order to reach the equal participation you're talking about, because this is one of the things that really excludes such communities. And that consciousness needs to be created before they partake fully in the electoral processes. So have you ever thought of doing such a thing or anything close to it? Have you been able to reach out to them? Because also they're geographically marginalized because they are far-flung and there is no adequate infrastructure to reach them. So what have you been doing? Are there strategies in place? If you become a commissioner, would this be an area of interest, and what would you do about it?
Thank you. I mean, in terms of disenfranchisement of a given group of population, it's always a very sorry state that such populations get marginalized even further in terms of participation in political processes. And yes, if you go the history lane of first even the persons with disability, I can tell you I've played a big role in terms of the inclusion of the persons with disability in this country. And so that just tells you, yes, I'll be very interested in those, I would call them double, triple marginalized groups of populations. What we've done as NDI before, we have caused a conversation. If you remember the initial stages of voting, the voting in itself, the booths, were not accessible to persons with disability. So that's one of the policy shifts we worked with Iebc to actually address. And I think in terms, if we could actually work to shift it when I was outside, if you give me the chance, I'm very sure that these are things that will be addressed. Let me take you to the second thing, the use of Braille. We have been proposing it since 2013. And I think it is something that needs to be realized so that because these are really the double, triple marginalized groups of people, and we wanted them really to participate in the electoral processes. Then there is also the others that will actually be very communal. I am sure that the people who are really disadvantaged come from communities. There must be a way to partner with community leaders. There must be a way of partnering with community structures to advance their inclusion in these political processes. And that's something I can actually give a commitment to undertake.
And you feel they deserve a unique, peculiar content in voter education?
Certainly. And the good thing normally is actually you should map out that level of marginalization and address it from a policy perspective so that it is really applied across the country. So they deserve a special voter education, but which is responsive to the marginalization. What is really marginalizing them? And can we then craft a voter education strategy that addresses that level of marginalization? And I just gave an example of just a few elements that marginalize groups of population.
In general terms, if you pay attention to the national dialogue on exhaustion of marginalization and affirmative action, what do you have to say to this? Because communities that are advantaged, communities that are endowed, are getting fed up with the use of marginalization in addressing issues of affirmative action, which is a sorry state in the country. Even in this discussion we had today, you also hear of insinuation of overrepresentation. So what do you have to say to this?
Well, I mean, one of the things we have to appreciate is that the whole society is not at the same place. And we have to then look at how to advance societies that are behind to also. If you look at even it, look at even the concept of equalization fund. It was meant to actually address marginalization, economic marginalization. So even us, when we are talking about inclusion within the political space, we need to advance policies. It is constitutional unless we amend the constitution for those who are tired about it. You know, we have to realize it. So if it is about representation of the marginalized, according to the Constitution and the laws, our job and mandate should be to facilitate the process to realize it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Back to you, Chair.
So have you changed your mind about equality of the vote?
Not at all. I just think that those people need to be brought so that their vote counts for what it is.
Okay, Nicodemus, please.
Thank you very much, Dennis. In your CV, we have looked at, you are very rich in the contribution you have made towards the Election Act, Political Parties Act, the Iebc Act. I'll want to concentrate on the Election Offences Act and the Elections Campaign Financing Act and the regulations. Kindly appraise this panel on the nature of your contribution to these two acts and the regulation and how you think they help in democratization of the electoral process in Kenya.
So, Mr. Nicodemus, if I understood you correctly, you are talking about my contribution to the Campaign Financing Act and Election Offences Act. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how they contribute towards the democratization of the electoral process in Kenya.
Okay. Thank you. First, the Election Offences Act, by the way, in 2011, was actually a few sections in the Elections Act. And we realized that that's really not sufficient to address this magnitude of the problem. And so it was actually brought as a separate act, I think in 2016 or thereabout. I'm not very clear about when this happened. The reality, Bore, is that if you go back to the single party and then the multi-party in the 90s and then the post-2010, things like bribery, personation were a norm, and there was no any consequence. And these were then meant to address some of those challenges. In fact, to an extent, that this actually disproportionately affected the same marginalized groups we are talking about. So if you look at the electoral offenses framework, it does help that there is repercussions for those who actually propagate these electoral offenses. And I think more recently we have added the issues of technology, application of technology. So there has been advancement in the process of actually how this is, but it is really meant to create a level playing ground, remove some criminal activities within the electoral space, and encourage participation, particularly of the marginalized group. Because there was research, I think, then that demonstrated that women were more unlikely to participate in the electoral processes because of some of these electoral offenses. And by the way, if implemented, it bars even candidates who are caught in some of these acts. So it is possible for a woman to run with a man, and then the man plays all those things, and they are barred from participating in the election, which then facilitates the participation. On the campaign financing, the history and context of it was that it was also supposed to levelize the playing ground and deal with the illicit finances within the environment. Over time, we have realized that this is not being achieved. In any case, I think we have been deferring its implementation since 2013. And how to levelize was that we say that if you are running for a given position, you cannot use more than this amount. Hopefully, that every person running for that position will have those type of money. We do know that these fingers are not the same, right? And so even when we have regulated that people should only spend a given amount of money, there are some people who still want to run and they don't have those particular sums of money. So I think for me, from a policy standpoint, we continue to monitor the impact these are creating in the political electoral environment and continue with the reforms to better the environment.
Thank you, Chairman, and all the best, Dennis.
Allow me to ask Prof to come and ask some questions. Prof, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just like Ms. Sati, let me state that the institution that Dennis heads have worked with it for so long, whether as a facilitator, as a resource person, as a consultant, I would say inherited me from his predecessor, but it won't affect my objectivity as I engage him. Therefore, my first question to you, because you yourself, you are on record here, saying that you deal with all political parties in your institution, and I can attest to that. You also went ahead to say that as a commissioner, you would be impartial and you believe that it would rub on the other commissioners. You also, in answer to Ms. Sati, said that whenever the Secretariat have come to play a role which should legally and through the regulations be played by the Commission, it's because they are filling a gap that exists. My question, based on what you yourself is on record on, is a scenario question. Imagine a powerful political figure is pushing you to bypass established electoral procedures. How would you respond while upholding the integrity of the electoral process?
Thank you. I think the very immediate answer is that in discharging my mandate as a commissioner, I'll be guided by the Constitution and the legal frameworks in place. So I think at the very immediate, that's very important. But Prof, let's be real, that political process, and for which I've carved my life in, are very tedious, are very messy, muddy. I want to offer suggestions that I think are very critical in my advancement or in my engagement. I believe, and not just believe, I am witness that there has not been sufficient engagement with the political leadership ahead of election. And that creates tension because there is no mutuality of agreement in terms of what is mutually beneficial for society, what is legally allowable in the framework. And the push comes because, first, the engagement in most instances have never been mutual. The second aspect that I also think we need to engage is how do you strategically use data and information within the Commission? The Commission sits, I just gave you a very simple example. The Commission sits on a lot of data sets that are just sitting. How do we use these data sets to help political parties and political players and the civil society and the public gain more trust in the political processes through transparent engagements? Prof, let me give you an example. If you consider the voter registration in 2022, can it shock you that only Kericho did not record a decline in voter turnout? All other counties actually recorded a decline in voter turnout. What has the Commission done with that data to help us address conversation around voter registration? But let me even make it worse. In fact, at the national level, the national average, the decline in voter registration or voter participation, voter turnout, was 13%. There are counties in this country that declined by 20%. What are we doing about it? Yet we are talking about addressing voter apathy. I think the Commission can do more to build trust, build relationship using some of this data they control, and take us to a free, fair, credible elections where all parties feel these people are not acting on behalf of somebody, but acting on behalf of Kenyans, and they are providing for us information and data that is helping us have a fair, competitive environment for our election.
Thank you. And my last question on this segment, you've also, both in your CV and during this conversation, indicated how you have worked with different stakeholders where various laws related to the electoral process as well as policies have been arrived at. Going back to the memory lane, do you recollect during those deliberations when you had to make a tough call that affected different stakeholders with conflicting interests? And the question is, if there is such an occasion, how did you balance the competing demands while ensuring fairness and transparency?
Thank you. And I want to speak about a very recent experience that involves members who are also here. The consensus, NDI facilitates dialogue, consensus building, and capacity development. And through this process, you meet a lot of contention because of interests. And one such event happened very recently when I had gotten an expert in electoral laws to explain the amendment to the first schedule of the Iebc Act on the nomination of members to the selection panel. It was really well-meaning. I wanted to help them come up with a decision that will not be contentious. And they sent me out of the room. And what do I do? I mean, you can see exactly how, and all these are my friends. All of them are my friends, but now I want to help them, but they're saying, you're already on one side. Now, in such scenarios, the best normally is to get a small group and huddle, build consensus, and then they can actually get conversations rolling with the other members. And finally, everybody sees the light bulb moment, like, okay, it makes sense. And here you are, the panelists were finally arrived at, and they're sitting here because of such interventions. So I think the conversation is, first, there is always expectation political processes elicit emotions, But I think foreseeing how you actually handle those differences in a way that helps small groups swell, we call it in technical research concepts, snowballing processes, right? You start with a few as you snowball, and then consensus is built. The effective issue is actually create a space for dialogue and consensus building always in the process of in the political processes.
Thank you, Chair.
Dennis, is there a reason for us to fear the foreign hand that NDI is in our processes?
I don't believe there is a reason to. First, let me say that NDI is a non-partisan organization, globally advancing democracy and good governance. In most instances, this advancement is aligned with the constitutions and the legal frameworks in every country and upholds the place of public participation. So the citizens themselves decide the direction their laws, their policies, the decisions actually align to. So, Chair, I do not think that there is any reason to.
It doesn't affect our sovereignty as a people.
The sovereign will of the people is articulated in our Constitution. I mean, and we enacted the Constitution. I don't think it does affect at all.
So if Dennis is successful, this foreign hand will not be seen in Iebc.
Chair, I want to reassure you and Kenyans that I'm impartial, I uphold integrity, I am professional, and I will continue to abide by the Constitution and all legal frameworks.
Professor, please.
Thank you, Chair. Dennis, I didn't take an opportunity to also agree with fellow panelists that your role and understanding of the electoral, political, democratic process cuts across, whether you're talking of political parties, whether you're talking of civil society, whether you're talking of where the country has come from. And that's where my first question to you in this segment comes. After the First World War, when Kenya was under colonization, there were the early resistance protest movements against the colonial policies. Name any two first such movements in Kenya.
Thank you, Prof. That really is deep. It certainly goes beyond my history of electoral processes. But let me try at that point. I know the Mau Mau rebellion.
Mau Mau is after Second World War. I talked of after the First World War. Anyway, I can pass that.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Okay, let me bring you to...
thank you for being fair.
Yeah, a more comfortable territory.
Okay.
How many special seats does the Constitution set aside for the special seats category in the Senate of the Republic of Kenya, if you can name the number and how they are assigned?
So for the Senate, we have 16 women. Then we have 2 for youth, one of either gender, and then we have 2 for PWD of either gender.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dennis. We have indeed enjoyed our talk with you, and thank you for shedding light on your capacity and just allowing us to be able to assess your candidature. I do not know whether you have any question or comment to make before we release you.
Cognizant that time has moved, I was really wishing to ask what success would look like to you people in this process, but only if the panel considered it's necessary to give. Otherwise, I would actually say that very grateful for the time. I've really enjoyed myself engaging with all of you. And I know that this assignment is quite onerous. If you know, we want to say that you people are inside there, but if you are outside there where I've come from, there is expectation of Kenyans around what you people are doing. And I can only pray for God's grace for all of you. So thank you.
Thank you very much. It's just that in this room, for you to interview, you must take an oath of office. So it's not possible for us to respond to that question. Enjoy your time and kindly pick your certificates. And your water is there, notebook, and wish you well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And thank you all.
Asante. Thank you, media. We kindly ask that you down your tools for a few minutes. We'll be back at 11:10.